2, 1, and we're going live.
Okay, good morning everybody. This is the first meeting of the newly formed Bus Services Subcommittee, so I want to welcome everybody to the meeting. Because it's an online meeting, I know we've had a number of problems with some members who are struggling to get logged on and so on, but we are working to try and deal with that. Hopefully we've got staff from the Combined Authority, we've got staff from TFGM, and we've also got a number of bus operators who've logged on and who will get the opportunity to speak later on in the agenda. So welcome everybody. I just hope that things go okay this morning, but we'll just have to move on and just see how things are going. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies?
None received other than Bob Morris at TFGM, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 2 is Chair's announcements and urgent business. Just under urgent business, I have had discussions with Go North West because there's currently an industrial dispute between themselves and Unite, the trade union, and a number of members have discussed this with me. So I think under item 5, where we've got comments from the bus operators, we'll deal with all the normal comments under that item, but following that we'll also ask Go North West if they want to comment on the dispute currently. Our interest is not to get involved in any negotiations. Our interest is to obviously speak on behalf of passengers and try and avoid any disruption. So we'll move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations from any members? If not, item 4 is appointment of vice chair. Barry Warner contacted me this morning to say he wanted to move Councillor Warren Bray for vice chair. I just wanted members to confirm whether they were happy with that.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Okay, is that agreed? Warren, are you happy to accept that nomination?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Barry.
Unlucky, Warren. Okay, so item 5 is where we're asking the bus operators if they would comment about bus operations in Greater Manchester over the last 6 months, because I know it's been a very difficult time for everybody. Now, I did receive an indication that Gary Nolan wanted to speak first on behalf of bus operators, and then I'll bring in any other operators, and then I'll ask members of the committee if they've any comments or questions on any of the issues that arise. So, Gary, are you around? Oh, right. Is Gary on the call? Does anybody know?
I don't think he's here, Councillor James.
All right. Well, let me just ask the bus operators in turn if they would like to comment on the last 6 months. Ian Humphreys, I think. Ian, are you here?
Yes.
Oh, well done, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was having problems unmuting there. Thank you. Yes, it's been a very, very challenging 6 months, I think, for everyone. I think I'll give a very quick summary and then some of my colleagues may wish to add to it. I think we, like everyone else, primarily were concerned about safety of our teams and safety of our customers, and responded as quickly as we could frequently to government guidance, particularly in terms of safety, PPE, procurement thereof, assessing risks and providing safe systems of work for all of our staff. And I think it's the right forum for us to just record our thanks to the frontline teams and the efforts they made to keep the services going, particularly for key workers during the most difficult time, March, April, May, etc. Services were provided, albeit at reduced frequencies, but really targeted towards the areas of the greatest need, particularly supporting NHS workers and such like. I think overall it's been quite challenging, but we have managed to wind down the services and then ramp them back up as appropriate more recently. And then of course in the last 2 weeks we've targeted our resources to meet the challenge of getting children back into school, which of course is something that we all wanted to succeed, given the importance of not disrupting their education. But I think that's a very, very quick overview of what's gone on. I think I'll leave it there and see if anyone else wishes to add to that.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Could I just ask any of the other bus operators if any of them would like to? All right.
Okay, so it's I'm on, am I? Yeah. So it's
Yes.
Bob,
Okay.
Bob Dunn from Diamond. Yeah, I agree with everything Ian said. Been very difficult, challenging times, obviously, and I don't think anybody could have been prepared for it. So we've needed to act quickly. We've needed to be agile and obviously understand what the customers need, and in particular essential workers. One key aspect's been keeping all our own staff safe as well, obviously. So we've done a lot of work on risk assessments and working with the trade union to make sure that we cover off everything, and they've worked really well with us, to be honest. Developed daily management meetings with the managers in the business, about 14 of us meeting daily through Teams and other means, and monitoring stuff like bus reliability and every aspect of the business in minute detail, really. And to be honest, if we can look for one positive out of this, we have learned a lot to do with the market and what we need to be doing going forward. We've had to develop systems how to communicate with stakeholders, with passengers, and obviously TFGM, everyone else, and get a system in place to communicate with passengers whether buses are going to turn up full or not full due to social distancing. And over the more recent weeks, we've introduced 48 brand new double-deck buses into Bolton, and that's growing every week now. So there should be more than 100 new buses in by the end of the year. So that's where we're at. At the moment, we operate about 94% of the mileage was operating pre-COVID. We're carrying just under 60% of the passenger numbers, but we are covering 100% of the network, albeit some of it slightly reduced frequency pre-COVID. 16 vehicles on duplicates for school, so we can obviously optimise that situation. And thankfully, we're not seeing an extremely high absent rate in terms of staff. So that's about where we're at, unless there's any questions.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Bob. I thought I'll go through any of the bus operators first who want to comment. Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, good morning and thank you, Chair. I'm Ben Jarvis, the Commercial Director for Stagecoach Manchester. I just thought I'd give you a brief update regarding the last 6 months, and it really echoes Ian's and Bob's comments as well about the challenge that we've faced and how our staff have sort of pulled together and performed admirably throughout, really. So we started seeing the effects of COVID in early March, but then as the restrictions came in, we saw a quick deterioration in usage. So by the end of March, we had around 15% of our normal patronage. So in line with the government CBSSG scheme, which was introduced to fund bus services with the significantly reduced demand due to COVID, we reduced service level to around 40% of normal levels from the end of March. But we have maintained coverage throughout. So all services have operated, but we've reduced the frequencies to come down to the numbers stipulated by the DFT. We also introduced several measures to help mitigate the effects of COVID. So we had increased cleaning regimes. We encouraged contactless transactions instead of using cash on our buses. We altered our change policy and we reduced vehicle capacity to maintain social distancing. We also introduced additional services to support key flows, so we had extra trips to places like Trafford Park and Logistics North. And we also informed our customers of which services were busy by introducing a busy bus information on our app that highlights which services are likely to be busier and should be avoided. So since Easter, we have seen usage increase around 2 to 3% a week, and in line with the CBSSG requirements, we've increased mileage. Mid-June, we went to about 90% of service level, and then from September, we've gone back to our full service. This week, we are seeing around 55% of expected usage, and this now presents our current challenge. Until this point, we've had sufficient spare resource to increase services to cover off both the rising demand and the social distancing requirements. But clearly, that's no longer possible when we're operating 100% of our fleet. So to assist with this challenge, we have worked with TFGM to introduce additional services, and this is done through funding provided by the Department for Education. We have 60 extra vehicles, some sourced from coach operators, supplementing commercial services where there are busy school flows. In addition to this, we have some additional resource to provide duplicated services, but despite good staff availability, the number of buses we have is finite, and we are already experiencing some pinch points. We are effectively managing the resource to mitigate the issues as they arise, but as demand continues to grow, it will become more difficult to ensure every customer can get on their intended bus whilst we still have social distancing requirements in place. So I think, just summing up the message from us, that we're working hard to providing a safe environment for travel. We're effectively managing the resource we have, but there is a risk that the temporary capacity limitations may impact on customers over the coming weeks as demand continues to return. Thank you, Chair.
Ben, before you go off, when you mentioned the Department for Transport, do they contact you directly? They don't do it through TFGM as such, or do they?
It varies. So yeah, we do have direct contact with the DFT and the DFE as well, but we also are aware that TFGM have direct contact. So depending on what the subject is, you know, it can go through either channel.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Paul Turner, I think Paul's next.
Morning. Firstly, sorry, my camera's defective, so you can't see me, which may be a good thing. Just a couple of things. Firstly, thank you for setting up this subcommittee, because this may sound strange to say, but I think we used to get a degree of value out of the old bus network committee that got a little bit lost under the previous arrangement. So I may regret that in a few months' time if I get some sort of hard questions, but I think this is all for the good. And again, just like previous speakers, yes, we followed the general pattern on there, so I won't repeat that, other than perhaps just to acknowledge the engagement with TFGM officers. We've probably challenged each other quite firmly at times, but generally speaking, we've not fallen out, and we've worked together to get things through. There is just one thing that I'd like to bring to the attention of committee members, is where the services are performing at the moment. Like other operators, we're in the high 50s, 60% of normal now, with one notable exception, which is the X43 which way service, which has been diverted in Manchester city centre due to the closure of Deansgate, and we're currently only carrying 25% of the normal customers who would board on Deansgate, because the bus stop has been relocated over to near Trinity Church on Chapel Street, and at the moment we think we're about 800 or 900 passengers a week below where that route would be if if customers were still able to board at Deansgate, and we're really concerned that that's a detrimental effect on not just on the bus passengers, but also air quality. With the extra mileage we're having to do, we're actually running 4% more mileage on that service because of the diversion. So I just wanted to draw members' attention to the fact that closure is having some quite significant effect on bus customers in that market, which I I hope we can review over time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. We've got a number of members who want to comment or ask questions, but before they do, let me just check if there's any other bus operators who would like to comment, because now, by the way, I know Gary Nolan can't log on, so if he does log on later, I'll ask him to say a few words as well. But are there any other bus operators who would like to...
Hi Roger, it's Nigel from Go North West. I'm not sure how to get my hand up here, but just to reiterate what the others have said, I think that the staff have done exceptionally well. Both those who worked through the worst of lockdown, and actually those who were on COVID, because I think it was quite difficult for them to be away from work for so long. And I think all staff played their role, and testament to TFGM, who were very communicative and supportive at the operational level on a week-to-week basis. And they helped some quite innovative things. So moving to a situation where it was exact fare only, so that customers didn't get change, which could have caused a lot of kickback, I think went really well and was as widely appreciated. The move on to contactless has done well. The signage on buses and in bus stations, I think, has gone down well. So I think it's been a good team effort. I guess the challenge now is can we ever get back to where we were? So at 60% of ridership, we would be miles away from having viable services. But frankly, even 90% of ridership wouldn't be enough to sustain the high levels of service that Manchester had before. And it's really good to see all the different agencies trying to balance making people feel comfortable about getting back to a level of normality, versus obviously we've got to respect that, you know, Manchester is still a high, or parts of Manchester are still high into the intervention levels. But you know, I realise self-praise is no recommendation, but I think as a wider community, the operators and TFGM can, you know, from where we were in March, I think it's been a good effort.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. Well, we've heard so far from Ian, Bob, Ben, Paul, Nigel. I've got a comment on here from Leslie, but I don't think Leslie needs to speak. What she's basically said, that she agrees with the comments from the other operators who've spoken, and she also wanted to thank TFGM staff for being helpful. In terms of members now, oh, by the way, just mention, by the way, as well as Gary Nolan having problems logging on, Councillor Stoyer is also in that position. So hopefully they'll join us later. I hope so. Anyway, in terms of questions, I've got down at the moment Nathan Evans, Phil Burke and David Miller. I've got 3. So if we can take them in turn, and if there's anybody else, please put it on the chat. OK, so Nathan.
Hello, good morning. I missed the last but one operator that spoke about the Deansgate problems. I missed where he was actually from, but that is fundamentally my question. In Trafford, I'm getting increasing mailbox full of people complaining about the A56 pop-up cycle lanes, which our council have. We're expecting a report which is delayed. So and then we come on to the Deansgate area, which effectively has become a car park and smoking zone for Uber Eats and Just Eat cyclists, and really doesn't enhance the city centre. Is it causing the operators problems in general across Greater Manchester, or is it just Trafford based, and that's where I'm from, and as that gentleman's just alluded to, the city centre there? Are there any other across the conurbation issues?
Anyway, I'm glad you're not trying to be controversial, Nathan, with those questions. Is there any other bus operators who can comment or answer what Nathan has said?
Yeah, Chair, it's Alistair Nuttall from Arriva. I can comment on the A56 certainly in Trafford, because obviously we operate along there. Got to say that when it was originally dropped on the ground back in whenever it was, it caused absolutely horrendous issues for us and for all traffic. I'm sure that that people, the councillor will know that the A56 came to a complete stop on, I think it was the Monday or the Tuesday after it was introduced. CORS does as an operator massive issues, both in terms of buses being delayed and also the access into and out of stops. But I have to give Trafford and Amy the due. They met with us. We had some very frank discussions with them. They actually came out on site with us, and after obviously the Altrincham end stuff was removed quite quickly, and they did some modifications to a lot of the bus stop arrangements on the sort of the Stretford to Manchester section, if you like. And from our point of view, at that point, it made it a whole lot better. And to be fair, it wasn't causing us too many problems. However, obviously, traffic levels have now increased again with the schools and colleges going back. And there is, you know, it certainly seems to be more people actually working back in the workplace rather than working from home. It's not ideal at all, but we're living with it at the minute. But it does need to be addressed. The Deansgate one doesn't particularly affect us. The loss of Blackfriars Bridge inbound does, and the loss of that stop there, that affects one of our service in from Peel Green, Eccles, Broughton into Manchester, and that again, the fact that you got, you know, Deansgate happened 1 week and then 3 weeks later Blackfriars got closed separately by a different authority. Very, very obviously from our point of view, there's been, you know, no, at the time they were being implemented, the authorities clearly weren't communicating with each other. You know, you've got the example in Trafford where you get to White City and it ends, and that's probably the busiest place on the entire A56 and probably the most dangerous to cyclists. You get to the city boundary and the whole scheme ends. Well, you can see the logic of why these things have been done. In some cases, they've been done very, very badly.
Okay, Alistair. I better say something. Just sorry, Phil. I'll bring you in a second. But you may not think local authorities talk to one another, but Manchester City Council and Salford City Council, probably there's never a week goes by where we don't discuss issues about bus services and highways and all the other things that are going on. So there is a lot of discussion taking place, but of course the public also are continually lobbying us about a number of issues. So I'll leave it there. Phil Burke.
Morning, Chair. Just to comment on a question, please. The first comment is to Bob at Diamond. I've had complaints that in the Hotwood area in Haywood, your bus drivers are actually refusing school children from getting on the bus and telling them to get off and go and get the school bus. Some of these children don't live on the school bus route, and they're being asked for ID. When they show them, they get me the pass, they're not recognising the R pass as well, and some of the children are having to wait later for other buses to come and take them home. Can we address it with your drivers that all children should be able to board any bus and not just be directed to the school buses which don't go near them? The question is to all the operators, what procedures have we put in place to deal with school children on the bus services? Have we put the extra buses on? I've got concerns from residents stating the buses are full and it is no social distancing on the school buses.
Okay, so Matt, are you going to pick that one up?
Yeah, I'll pick that up, Bob. Yeah, Councillor Burke, I've been in conversation this week with TFGM regards some information that you fed through to them. I'll give them some feedback, but just to reassure, we've worked closely with TFGM over the last 4 weeks to work out from our own data pre-COVID as to what services we believe would suffer with capacity issues. We've got a follow-up call with them today to review where them services sit and whether they're in the right place or whether we need to adjust them for next week. Social distancing wasn't to be applied on school services because we're a closed school service and it's classed as a bubble, and all drivers have been DBS checked aligned to DFT requirements. And I think think TFGM will probably agree that there's been an almighty effort done by all to put some 300 journeys extra out every day to try and make sure we accommodate all kids. We may have got the odd thing wrong, but we're obviously talking daily with our staff to make sure that everyone that wants to travel does travel, but we are obviously encouraging any school children that are travelling where there is a service to use it and not use the normal service, because obviously the capacities are low and some services are down to 22 maximum, some are 37 depending on vehicle type. So all in all, it's the only comment we've had this week where we've had concerns about school children being able to board. So we have reached out to staff following your comments to TFGM and made them aware of the importance of being aware where the children are travelling to and whether there is a duplicate service that they could have used or whether they need a normal service.
Okay, Phil. Okay, I've got David Miller, and I've also where are we? I've got Sean as well. Sean Fielding after David. David.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a brief comment, actually, then a question. The comments on the A56 and the impact of the pop-up cycle lane, rather, were really helpful, actually, from my perspective, because I was getting a lot of push to do a similar lane on the A6, and it somewhat confirmed where my fears were in relation to maybe going down that route. So those comments were quite helpful. Just as a general question, and this is I guess to all the bus operators, really. Obviously, in terms of the position that you're in at the moment, in terms of the current levels of usage and then projecting forward, hopefully increased patronage. My worry is, as it stands at the moment, in terms of where you all are you, I mean, I'm going to phrase it as quite a general question. I guess my worry is that we could see obviously route cuts as a result of the position that you may be in at this time. Now, I'm not suggesting to put your necks on the line too much, but I'm curious to hear whether, as it stands at the moment, are routes in danger as a result of the current situation that you're in terms of the levels of patronage or lack of patronage? That's what I'm getting a sense of, because my worry is that we will see routes being cut as a result of where we are at the moment. So I would just appreciate a general comment. I'm not after specifics, because I know obviously that's quite sensitive and I don't want to hold you too much. It's just a general sort of comment I am after, really, in terms of where the future of routes may be as it stands at the moment. Thank you.
I'll ask Ben Jarvis to comment, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we certainly have those concerns as well. You know, if resultant patronage is less than what we've seen pre-COVID, then, you know, we do need to try and balance the books. But I think, you know, we should see it as an opportunity as well. The thing that's holding us back at the moment is the social distancing requirements. Once, hopefully, that subsides, then really we need to collectively work together to try and promote bus usage in Greater Manchester, to try and get people back on bus, to get those numbers up, to ensure that we try and, you know, keep those services running. It's the one that are most at risk will be the more lesser frequency services, the ones, you know, further out, perhaps more rural. So, you know, we really do need to encourage people back onto to buses in order to prevent those cuts from happening. But we're certainly looking at it and are very concerned, as you are.
Okay, thanks. Sean.
Thanks, Chair. So a couple of comments and then a question that's probably more for officers than an operator. But our main operator in Oldham is First, as many members of the committee and other people on the call will know. I'd just like to say thanks for the team at First for being responsive when I've had queries from residents about particular services. We've not always had a good relationship with the bus company in Oldham, but that has changed and that's really welcome. And I've had a response to this morning while I've been on this call about a query that I put in. So I just wanted that to be recorded, really, because it is a change in attitude and relationship between us and the company. A comment about something that was raised by Stagecoach, but I know it's not only Stagecoach that have done this in terms of changes to their app. The capacity markers, I think, is a real positive and something that I would hope, if it's not something that's costing the companies that are doing it a fortune to have on their app, is retained, because as we move towards more flexible working and people do start to return to the office, but perhaps only for a few days a week, or they don't have to go in at 9 o'clock in the morning and come home at 5. I think it will be really useful to retain that feature so that people can change their travelling behaviour accordingly, so that they can get a seat and ensure that they can have a more comfortable journey into town and use services that are less busy. So I would hope that operators retain the feature of their app that tells people how busy buses are even after we come out of this. My particular question though is about the updating of timetables and bus service information on stops. I travelled into Manchester a couple of weeks ago now, and we were waiting for a service to bring us back to Failsworth that was still displaying a timetable that said that the 76 was only hourly at the time. So we went off and had another drink, which is great, but actually the frequency of the bus had changed, and I think it's half hourly at that time. And so that can't possibly be the only stop where that's incorrect, because that is a particularly important stop on Lever Street in Manchester. So there must be stops throughout the city region where there is incorrect information on bus stops, and I'd just like to know if it's realistic to expect that that will be updated soon, and if we've got the capacity to do that. But I think that's more of an officer question rather than an operator one. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Well, let's try and pick it up. The first one was Ian Humphreys. Ian, do you have anything to say in terms of what Sean said about First and Oldham?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Councillor Fielding's comments. It's welcome to hear that our feedback is appreciated, and we certainly welcome the input we get from members, particularly where it is quite specific and enables us to target where and how we respond. It's been a particularly difficult 10 days as the schools have returned, and I know Councillor Fielding has provided me with some feedback from parents, which is actually really quite helpful, far better than we'll get from general comments. So yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And TFGM, is there an officer from TFGM who could just comment on the timetable issue, please?
Go on, Alison.
Hi, good morning everybody. I can comment on that. And I think generally since the start of lockdown back in March, and really the rapid rate at which services were changing and then sort of ramping up again, it just feasibly wasn't possible to keep on top of all those changes, because they were being made at very, very regular frequencies. Our focus throughout the main period of the lockdown was very much about directing passengers to digital information, and we certainly have kept our website fully up to date throughout the period. We have had sort of temporary signs up at stops, sort of making passengers aware of that, and to very much check the website. But the sheer logistics of being able to keep on top of all the changes that were happening just wasn't possible. I can confirm, however, that we are now about to start a process of updating information at stops. Again, I would just say that logistically is a huge exercise, but we are about to start re-undertaking that. So we should start to see, and we'll start to see, updates being made very soon.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Roy Walker, I think, has been waiting patiently. Roy?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Right, two quick questions, I promised. One is to Bob Dunn at Diamond Bus Services. We were in correspondence about a new service. I know this is local, but from Bury, serving Radcliffe, Whitefield, Prestwich, bypassing the city centre to the Manchester hospitals. I gather that no such application has now gone in. It's a pity in a way, during people needing hospitals and so on at the moment, very much. If it will be taken up, this suggestion, after coronavirus, after Christmas or whatever, sometime in the future. And the second question is just to confirm what I was advised by an officer this week. Unite have approached us, and I've replied in writing about the dispute, Go North West, which is in the Manchester.
Right, on that, we're coming to that next after we finish this. So
I'll hope to still be here till 12:30. It was only to confirm that conditions of service in companies don't affect us taking them up on a bus route. Anyway, I'll come back to that then. Thank you. Just the first question then. Thank you.
Okay, Bob, are you there? Oh, Bob.
I'm here, yes, thank you. Okay, so yeah, we definitely did explore the idea. We did all the costings. We did break-even analysis on how many people we need to carry. At that particular time, we felt that we'd got a number of spare drivers, spare vehicles. I'm just one of 6 directors on our main board. 2 of us were in favour of starting a new service, if I'm honest, because we do need to develop the network that we have, and we want to. But unfortunately, I suppose the risk at the time and the fact that business has not been exactly booming for the last 6 or 7 months, it's gone against it. But you know, it is something we want to revisit, and this because, like I say, we're investing a lot in vehicles, a lot in training, and we do want to develop the services we do. So it's not completely off the table, but it just got pushed to one side during times when business has been a bit more thriving. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does that mean you got outvoted, Bob?
Yeah.
we had a conversation. I think I got persuaded it wasn't the right time to do it. So is that outvoted, or is it just, you know?
Well,
it's just, yeah.
It's very democratic when you are the boss. But can I say briefly that I think it was a good idea. 1 or 2 of the buses that go Wigan way from those 4 or 5 hospitals went into the city centre, and some people only use them to go into the city centre. Other people got on there to go wherever. But I think this, to bypass the city centre, whether it was once an hour, whatever, well publicised, I would think would be a great public service for the people of the borough of Bury, serving Radcliffe, Prestwich and Whitefield. Thank you.
And we totally agree with it. It's an idea that came from the team, and we, you know, I supported it all the way, but not at the moment, but maybe in the near future. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'm assuming that we didn't manage to get Gary Nolan. Otherwise, I'd have asked him to speak. Are there any other comments or questions from members of the committee or from the bus operators?
Yes,
okay,
please.
well,
yeah.
Who said that?
You've got Councillor Leach.
All right, John.
Right, sorry about that. That my text message to Nicola didn't seem to go. I must have sent that to some very confused other individual by mistake. Yeah, it was just, I would like to say something on the dispute as well when you come onto that item, Chair. But specifically, it was just a question about reduced level of service, whether bus services are ensuring, bus operators are ensuring that first and last services are being retained, or do we have a situation where we have a number of services where the first and last buses have been cut and not reinstated?
Okay, thanks, John. Does anybody want to pick that up?
Chair, I'll happily comment on that.
Ian?
Yeah, just to reassure Councillor Leach, I can only speak for First, but certainly on our network, we retained first and last journeys on all routes throughout the whole of the COVID process, if that's the right word. Even at the times of the lowest frequency, we still kept the first and last the same, particularly as they were relevant to key workers, particularly at hospitals. And in fact, at certain times on bank holidays, we ran additional early morning and late night journeys that wouldn't normally feature, such as over Easter weekend.
Okay, thanks, Ian. And I've seen the comment from Paul Turner as well, saying something similar. Okay, well, if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to move on to the second part of this, which is the issue of the dispute, which John Leach has just commented, Roy has commented. I've had a number of comments in the press, and we did ask Go North West if they'd just comment on this and just tell us the interest of this committee, by the way, just so people are clear. We're not attempting to get involved or negotiate on this issue. What we're worried about is we don't want any disruption of bus services, naturally, on behalf of the bus passengers and so on. So if I could ask Go North West if they would say something, please.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, I'm very happy to. I think the best way to do this is for me to just brief you on the facts. In terms of what's going on, We've inherited a depot. I think you know we bought the depot last year, and we're trying to modernise the working practices to bring them in line with the rest of the industry. So we have things like drivers are being paid to wind manual blinds, but we haven't had manual blinds since the end of the last century, and we've got situations where drivers are on their last trip and running late. They can ask passengers to leave the bus while they make way to depot, and the rostering rules mean that we have lots of spare shifts that we just don't have enough work for the drivers, so it imposes lots of cost. So we've got practices that are holding us back, and we need to fix. Now, our drivers are among the best paid in Manchester. And what we've said that if we can agree proposals on these working practices, every driver would receive £5,000 as a share in the benefits. We would give a no redundancies guarantee, and we'd give inflation-backed pay rises in 2021 and 2022. So just the headline there, because I think it gets lost in the news, no cuts to pay rates, no cuts to hours, and no reduction in the number of driver rules. In terms of why it's needed, I wouldn't normally be this frank, but I think people need to know that Queen's Road loses close to £2 million a year. And that almost entirely stems from the poor productivity caused by the working practices. And of course, while those working practices continue, the business will continue to lose money on that sort of scale, which just leaves us with the awful choice, because if we try to persist with it, we've got services in a depot that are unsustainable, and it means they're at risk for customers. So ultimately, it becomes a choice really between either somehow addressing the working practices or ultimately winding down and closing the business. Now, in terms of how we've tried to engage, we started in March, so this started pre-pandemic. It's not a COVID issue, and held more than 20 meetings with Unite between March and July. Unite's position has been that they are opposed to change. They haven't tabled any counter proposals, and they have declined to put anything to ballot to members. Now, that left us in a situation really where we had a sort of no negotiate, no ballot, that we couldn't make progress, and the union were not prepared to resume talks. So we issued something that's called a Section 188 notice, and we did that on the 14th of August. And the purpose of that was to try to kickstart fresh talks with Unite. Now, that Section 188 notice allows the company to recontract drivers, or as it gets used in the press, hire and refire. But it basically means that people, you know, we would iron out those working practices and move to new contracts without them. Again, you know, to reiterate, with no job losses, with no pay cuts. And now that process, that Section 188 process, allows for 45 days for fresh talks. And we've been trying to persuade Unite to enter into those talks, because unless they do, we'll get to day 46 with a choice to make without having their input. And the basis of those talks has been to seek from them alternative ways of implementing change. And we've said that if they can find alternative ways, then we would be open to them. But since pulling out of those talks, even after we've issued the Section 188, Unite are not prepared to re-enter. Now, the situation is being complicated by events involving a union rep. One of the union reps involved in the negotiating team during that March.
Nigel, I don't think we want to
Okay, I'm nearly finished. I've
Yes,
got there now.
okay.
Okay. So that is being dealt with as a separate matter. So what's happening now? We are seeing disruption at the depot. We're seeing some social media criticism of staff and of third parties. The police have been attended the depot on 4 different mornings to control turnout, and we are trying to get Unite back to the negotiating table. Sorry if that was a little long.
No, it's okay. Nigel, I'm trying to be balanced in the fact that because Unite are not present, they will have a different point of view to yourself, but nevertheless, it's helpful. I've got Phil Burke, I've got Nathan Evans, and I've got John Leach. So I'll take those 3 in that order,
Right.
please. Phil?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Nigel.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks, Roger. Morning, Nigel. The concerns we have as councillors in Rochdale that whatever disputes are taking place, it'll have a massive effect on the bus services in Rochdale. I'm a bit concerned that you're saying on one hand you're giving £5,000 to the drivers as some sort of sweetener to get them to sign the new contracts, but on the other hand they're losing £3,500 anyway. Now, I don't like what I've been reading in the press, that it's heavy-handedness, bully boy tactics, so the suspension of the Unite rep in the workplace, that we're having to deal with this. How confident are you at getting the Unite rep round the table and resolving these issues? Because at the end of the day, it's the people in the north what will suffer if there's any more strike action or delays to bus services.
Thanks, Phil. Nathan?
Thank you, Chair. I didn't really have a view on this. I didn't know an awful lot about this until I received a phone call one day earlier this week, and basically was I'm used to lobbying from residents, I'm used to lobbying from businesses, but never have I actually been threatened that if I didn't sign a letter of support for Unite, that my own personal business would be picketed, which it duly was picketed in Trafford. And I ended up having to call the police, who politely asked the 5-6 people picketing outside my computer repair shop to get off my own private property. So I'm quite sympathetic with Nigel, to be fair, in that they are intransigent. It was sign this letter that you've not read, or we're going to picket your business, which has got no connection to buses whatsoever. So it must be truly difficult dealing with these people. And my sympathy does go to Go North West, and I hope they can resolve it quickly.
John Leach.
Thank you. I think lots of comments have already been made already, and I'm not going to go into any details about the discussions that I had with a Unite rep who contacted me in the last couple of days. But clearly the bus company's view of things and Unite's view of things are very, very different. Certainly from what Nathan has just said, that is completely unacceptable, what Unite have done in relation to his completely unrelated business. But by just by the comments that I've heard from the bus company and from Unite, we seem to be in a position where we're likely to have bus services affected because there is no give on either side. From the bus company's perspective, I think it would be helpful for members if the bus company could actually provide us something in writing that actually addresses some of the issues that Unite have put to members about some of the things, whether it's the £3,500 pay cut, or whether it's the manner in which the union rep has been dealt with by the bus company. But I do think it's important that some of those issues are looked at. However, going forward, surely there's got to be some give and take from the bus company to get them back on the Unite back to the negotiating table, because the last thing that we want is another impact on bus services for residents that obviously have already been affected so badly over the last 6 months.
Okay, David Mellor.
Thanks, Chair. I think that the only question I've got really is just the use of the Section 118 notices. It seems like an incredibly heavy-handed way to try and get into negotiations for revised terms and conditions. Why serve Section 118 redundancy notices? It seems incredibly heavy-handed. I'd love to know why Go North West have pursued that route really instead of alternative routes. Thank you.
Okay, well, I want to wind this up now because the committee's role, I'm very clear about it. We want to bring together the bus operator and the trade union so that we can have a proper discussion on this, but our role is not to intervene in those negotiations as such. Nigel, do you want to come back on some of the comments?
Yeah, thank you. Just in terms of the seriousness of the situation, the problem is losing virtually £2 million a year. The jobs and the future of people at Queen's Road are in jeopardy, and we need a way of resolving that and bringing it to a head. And faced with an inability to get the unions around the table, the Section 118A is a way of bringing it to a head, because closing it and pulling out of Manchester is something that we don't want to do. So we do need to find a resolution, and just not talking about it won't make it go away. I just want to kind of just kill stone dead this word that somehow there are £3,500 pay cuts. There are not. So the proposals are posted on the walls in the depot for all to see. They guarantee future pay increases, guarantee working hours. There are no pay cuts. So that's just simply not true. In terms of some of the behaviour that's been experienced, there has been a lot of intimidation. Unite have something called the leverage unit. We were warned that they would be rolled out in this case, and it is making the lives of sort of managers, colleagues, and some third parties here who work in association with us are getting similar treatment to what was described before, and that's a reality of how it's happened. But let me be absolutely clear: we want to get round the table. We want to find alternatives. We have got a problem that needs solving, so the problem won't go away. But if we can fix, we want to fix it, but we want to fix it with the unions. So I'm absolutely committed to that. So I just want to be very open. And so, a bit like Roger was saying, I absolutely don't expect anybody to intervene in the dispute, but please, if you can use any offices or influence you've got to encourage them to the table, that would be a route forward. Okay, thanks, Nigel. Thank you. We'll move on, but the request from this committee, obviously, we would like both sides, both yourself and Unite, to get together for further discussions, and the sooner that happens, the better. Okay, thanks to everybody. Let's move on now to item 6, which is forthcoming changes to bus services, and there's also an addendum which I'm sure Alison and or Nick will go through for us, and I can see Nick anyway, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is well, and welcome back to Bus Services Subcommittee. Familiar report to start off with in terms of forthcoming changes, but I think it's fair to say not really a familiar week, as Councillor Jones has alluded to there. We've had to send out a supplementary report, which normally I would kick off this report by going straight over to members on Annex A to question around commercial changes, but I think it's worth just having a quick summary of what has happened in the last week or so and the requirement for us to submit that supplementary report. So going back a week or so, we saw the start of 2 additional services, the 305, the 236 by North Western Buses on the 2nd of September, last Tuesday. 2 days later, we received notification from the operator of their willingness to remove the 305 and amend the 236 after just 2 days of operation. Only 2 days. Didn't really give us reasons why. The 236 allegedly because of horrendous traffic. As we are aware, that is a very unusual situation. We said that they were unable to do this until a change date. So we said they had to abide by our rules and not able to change the 305 until the 25th of October. But said we would work with them over the 236 if they wanted to change or amend that. We were happy to negotiate. Then on the Friday, we became aware, again through third parties, that neither of these services were running. We contacted the operator, had some difficulty to try and find out why. Had they gone out of business? Again, we were unaware of any circumstances. We had no formal notification why this had happened, which in itself is very, very disappointing. We have since formally written to the operator. We have had no formal reply. We have contacted the traffic commissioner to notify them of the situation. There's clearly been a lot of concern from local members, local politicians. We have kept the local MP for Denton and the leader of Tameside fully updated. We've obviously had to update our websites. Communications, shall we say, with the local operators and rumours has been sketchy, to say the least. It appears that they've just walked away from the service, allegedly, or both the services, allegedly, because there are no passengers. And as we know from an operating point of view, that is just not the way you operate bus services. And I think as fellow operators on this call would concur, that is just such a disappointing way to operate in any climate. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. It's disappointing. That was the reason why we had to amend and submit the supplementary papers, which are there for you to analyse. So that's unusual. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often. When it does happen, it's usually because a company goes out of business. But in this instance, it's an operator that sadly has just walked away. So that's where we are in this particular instance. So that's the update. Happy, Chair, to take any questions around Annex A from members around Annex A for starters, please.
Well, I know John Leach wants to come in about the 180, but before I ask John, I just wanted to ask Warren to comment on what you've just said, Nick. Warren?
Yeah, just let me get my camera on. There you go. Yeah, it's a horrendous situation, and I can understand why the MP was jumping up and down, because the public knew nothing about this. The bus services just ceased overnight, and as Nick said, completely unacceptable. What I want to know is what TFGM are going to be saying to the traffic commissioners about the future of this company, because they shouldn't be in business if they're going to operate like that. My concern now is I've spoken with Alison and Nick yesterday regarding the 205 or 305 as it became, and I accept their explanation on that there are alternative routes to get to Denton, albeit having to change a bus. But there's, whereas a 205 used to give a direct service, you have to change it now at Manchester Road. But I'm more worried about the 236, and I'd like a bit more explanation as to what is going to happen with that, because it's a well-used service. That the 205, 305, perhaps there was a problem with passenger numbers, but I don't think that's the problem with 236. So I'd like a bit of more explanation, and possibly to know what TFGM are going to do to remedy that situation with the 236. Thank you, Roger.
Okay, thanks, Warren. We'll come back to you, Nick. Don't worry, don't go away. John Leach.
Thanks, Roger. Yes, I wanted to speak specifically about the number 7, item 7 on section 7 on item number 6, the service 180, and specifically ask a couple of queries regarding petitions about bus services and how they're handled by the committee. Because obviously this petition came into Transport for Greater Manchester several months ago, and has only just got onto this agenda today. So it would be helpful if it's made clearer how a petition is actually to be put forward to a committee in future circumstances.
John, before you go on to your other point, let me just answer that directly, because I've asked the same question as you. Because much to my surprise, when I talked to the combined authority, because we're a committee, if you like, of the Transport Committee, which is a committee of the combined authority, there was no procedure for receiving petitions. There is in the local authorities, but there isn't here. So I had a chat with a number of members, and I think our consensus is that we ought to at least lay down, as you've suggested, a procedure that we can follow from now on. So unless anybody's going to argue about this, in which case we'll put it on the agenda next time, we're suggesting that if there's any petitions coming in from members about public transport, one, it should be submitted to TFGM, and that we should ask TFGM to report back to the next main committee or subcommittee, depending on what, if it's a bus issue, it would come back to this committee. And I think we ought to follow that procedure from now on. I mean, I do accept, well, I have to accept that there wasn't a procedure anyway. I think from today's meeting, I'm hoping we can agree that petitions go to TFGM, they report back to the next committee, if it's a bus issue, this one, or it may be other issues. So, OK, John, carry on now.
Yeah, well, first of all, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that this situation has just uncovered the fact that we needed to put a procedure in place, and that's fine. The specifics of this bus service, and these issues have been raised with me by a former member of the Transport for Greater Manchester committee, well, a former version of this committee, former councillor Richard Knowles. And so it's not a bus service that I'm aware of, because it's a service up in Oldham, but he's raised a number of concerns about the impact that this service has had in terms of Greenfield, Monday to Friday, particularly in relation to school services. And there are apparently buses running, but out of service buses running into Greenfield in the morning peak. But the alternative provision that's been put in place, which includes 2 buses and a long wait, is considered by local people to be completely unacceptable. The lack of a Sunday service means that there's also no direct access to the Peak District, and there have been several reports in recent months of major problems with illegal parking because there are no alternative public transport options for people getting into the Peak District. So I would hope that officers would have a look at this service again and see whether or not there does need to be a service put in place. One extra point that Richard raised with me was specifically about timetables, and obviously timetables have come up as an issue already today. I understand that one service has been reintroduced in the morning, but nobody knows that it's actually running because there's no up-to-date timetables for people to access. So if that situation could be looked at specifically in relation to that route as well, please.
OK, thanks, John. I'll just ask Ian Humphreys if you want to comment, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Service 180, we have increased the number of trips on it from the 30th of August in line with the other network uplifts. I would just like to put it in context. It is very, very lightly used. I did provide officers at the beginning of this week with some pre-COVID data so that will help the discussions. But we are talking about an average of 5 people per journey Monday to Friday and 3 per journey on a Saturday. We've put extra journeys in from the end of August. I have reassured officers that we are not planning to withdraw the service. We're happy to continue with it, but it is lightly used. The journeys that are running now are targeted to what appears to be the strongest market, if I can put it that way, which is the shopping off-peak journeys. That's what we're running more of. I've said we'll change it again in October when we next make service updates. Happy to revisit it, but we must keep the resource in context with the actual demand. So any specific feedback would be helpful. And specifically on Councillor Leach's point, we have also engaged with Richard Knowles on a number of occasions to try and understand the issue that he's highlighting. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I've got David Mellor and then Phil Burke. David.
Thanks, Chair. Just to comment on what's going on with North Western. Just to echo Councillor Bray's comments, really. Quite incredulous, really, the way they've acted. I think, obviously, I fully support what TFGM are doing on this in terms of taking it to the Commissioner. I guess my only fear is, obviously, I don't want to go into bus reform in detail. Obviously, now it's not the time and place, I think, really. But I think, from my perspective, the way they've acted here, I hope they will never be receiving a penny of TFGM money going forward in light of how they've acted with this. So that's the first thing. The second comment, really, is just to say I've had a couple of members from Heel Green raise a couple of suggestions in relation to the 130. Obviously, really, pleased that links have been expanded on that service. It was just to say what I'll do, Nick, is am I okay to forward those comments over to pass to D&G? It's just a couple of suggestions, that's all, just to see whether it can serve a few more residents in Heel Green. Thank you.
Yeah, pass them on to TFGM. Phil Burke.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. It's just a comment in relation to the 587, the Rochdale service. We'd just like to thank First for taking this service over from Yorkshire Tiger. It really is much appreciated by the local residents.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I don't think I've got any other comments on. So, Nick, can I just ask you to sort of summarise and answer some of the comments that have been made?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chair. So coming back to Councillor Bray, we've obviously written to the Commissioner. We will chase up on their response. I mean, it is quite a long process in terms of what they could or couldn't do with regard to North Western. It could end ultimately in an inquiry. We hope they take it seriously, and we'll obviously work closely with the Commissioner with regarding supporting any evidence they need. Ultimately, I want a response from the operator themselves, and we are following up as to why they have not formally responded to us as to why they've taken the actions, and we'll continue to pursue that. In terms of the 236, as I think we've stated in the report, there was just a couple of stops that were unserved as a result of this. I think a lot of the route continues to be covered by other services, but I understand that another service coming into the area by Hullies of Baslow has now been registered to stop at those services. So I do think that is fully covered now in terms of that particular service. So we are just looking at other options, and as I say, we are keeping the local politicians updated. And likewise, Councillor Bray will keep you updated as well.
Okay, thanks, Nick. In terms of the recommendations, can I ask committee members? I'll take them one at a time. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to read these because Nick's written it, so they go on a bit. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that, Nick. I couldn't resist. Okay, the first recommendation is that we note the cessation of services operated by GB Coaches Limited under the Northwestern trading name with immediate effect, and that TFGM officers have reported the matter to the Traffic Commissioner for the Northwest of England. I think all committee members will agree with that. Everybody happy? Two is to note and comment as appropriate on the changes to the commercial network and the proposals not to replace the deregistered commercial services as set out in Annex A. Okay. 3, agree that no action is taken in respect of changes or deregistered commercial services as set out in Annex A. Okay. 4, note that no services fall under Annex B currently. And 5, to approve the proposed changes to general subsidised services as set out in Annex C. Is everybody happy? Well, happy is not the right word. Is everybody happy to support those recommendations? Okay, thanks for that. Let's move on to item 7, which is funding for the dedicated home to school and college transport. And I think, Alison, this report's already gone to the combined authority, hasn't it? Yeah.
It has, thank you, Chair. This report was presented to the Combined Authority on the 2nd of September. We have touched on school services a little bit throughout this meeting, so it was really just here for members' information and to give this committee a full update on how we have allocated and used the £2.25 million grant that we've received from the Department for Education. So that was to provide additional dedicated home to school and college transport, and it's been used to provide additional capacity on the commercially operated bus network. And the reasons for that are because primarily 90% of school children who use the bus to get to school travel on commercially operated services, and they are currently restricted due to sort of the social distancing requirements. Capacity is restricted on them, in some cases to sort of very low numbers that are able to board those services. So the report sets out that approach, the criteria that we've used and the process that we've gone through in terms of analysing which of those services should receive additional sort of support in terms of an additional service running alongside it. And in total, there are now around 300 extra trips every day running on the network. They're being closely monitored. We know that things can change, and where we had predicted high levels of demand might not necessarily be the case. So we're in a very close period now of monitoring, and we can make changes and react should we need to. And we've kept in touch with the local districts throughout this, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay, thanks, Alison. I think the report's for noting, unless any member wants to jump in. Everybody happy to note it? Okay, thanks for that. Item 8 is the Ring and Ride services, just to bring us up to date with what's happening with Ring and Ride. Nick.
Okay, thanks everyone. Yeah, really give us an opportunity to give an update of Ring and Ride. Obviously, I think everyone's familiar with the service, and a service that has been hit hard by the COVID impact. We suspended the service with effect from the 24th of March. Understandably, because of the nature of the clients that use Ring and Ride. During April and May, we started to reintroduce it for essential journeys only. Really, obviously, taking into consideration all the safety concerns. So it had 2 metre social distancing, and we only carried a maximum of 2 people on board at any one time. Reintroducing a maximum of 20 vehicles, and all the drivers were issued with PPE, enhanced cleaning regimes, and customers were asked to wear face masks. A limited number of staff returned to Manchester 1, but most of the staff were working from home. Initial usage, as you can imagine, was very, very low. In the first week, only 2% of pre-COVID levels initially. That raised up to 11% up to July, and really the service levels now from the 3rd of August, we've sort of returned to normal operating hours, but we're up to about 16% now of sort of pre-COVID levels. So really a slow return to service levels to what we were sort of pre-COVID. So I think it's going to be just a steady monitoring of where we are now going forward. We're just considering about reintroducing of assisted travel and the challenges that that will introduce, and commencing from the 1st of September, the introduction of door-to-door assistance. So as you can imagine, this is a valuable service to GM, to the GM community, and something that we are going to have to monitor as and when the pandemic remains. Any questions around Ring and Ride and the challenges that it faces going forward? Welcome any questions or thoughts.
Well, Barry Warner from Salford asked me to say earlier that we've always supported Ring and Ride, as you know, and we still do, and we want it to survive and prosper. But I do accept it's a very difficult time, especially for elderly and disabled people, because many of them, as you know, are isolating, and you know, many of them are quite frightened by the situation with the coronavirus, which is understandable. So I think what you've said, Nick, is sensible, that we'll try and receive regular reports and progress about Ring and Ride, and we'll keep it at the top of our minds. I don't think I've got any other comments from anybody.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh. Yes, okay. So are we happy to note this report and ask for regular updates on Ring and Ride? Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Move it.
Okay, thanks for that. Item 9 is the GMTC work programme. Who's that? Hiya.
It's Gwyn.
Hi, Gwyn. Sorry about that. Oh, I've got you now. Yeah, I've got you.
Thanks, Chairman. Just very briefly, this is the work programme for both the main committee and the 2 subcommittees up until November. Hopefully we've captured everything. There is yet to be scheduled the RAPS report on the coordination of works across the highways. If I'm brave enough, are members happy that it does include everything that you've requested to date?
Okay. David Mellor, comment.
Thanks, Chair. Just in light of, I guess, what's been touched on with this meeting and what may be touched, I guess, in the other committee, who knows? Do we need a piece of work, or do we need to look at something which can encourage people to get back onto public transport, but obviously to advocate that it is safe and we're doing everything we can to make it safe? Because obviously stories in the press at the moment are that people are resorting to buying cheap used cars for a couple of £100 and getting around in those. And my worry is we're going to see a change in behaviour and we're going to struggle to get it back. So I think I'd be quite keen to know what TFGM are doing and what we can do to begin to promote public transport use again, but obviously advocating that we're doing everything we can to keep it safe. So just some thoughts on there, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I think Mark Aldred will still be on the call, I hope. I think, Mark, that's something we could pick up at the main committee meeting, because it's something that we do need to discuss. Are you there, Mark? Oh, yeah.
I am, yes. We definitely will, yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mark. Any other comments? Phil?
Thanks, Chair. It's just a quick one. For the last 18 months, 2 years, I've always raised about bus lane cameras, especially in outside authorities other than Manchester, who seem to have them all, for help and support in getting them. I've asked the mayor, I've asked the officers, and we get told someone will come back and they'll be looked into. And yet I'm asking the same question 18 months on. We've got all these white elephants sitting around in different districts, not doing anything apart from giving an extra lane of traffic to speeding cars going to and from the city centre. Please, can we address the cameras for other districts instead of just city centre?
I think we can ask TFGM for a report on that, can't we? And it could come back to this committee next time, I would have thought.
Roger, we have asked for the last 18 months, 2 years, for a report, a study to see if we can get the help and support to install cameras along different routes, key routes from Rochdale, Middleton to Manchester. It must be falling on deaf ears because we never get a response from the officers.
No, well, the only thing I'll say, Phil, is now this committee, now we're back in operation, then we need to look at that. Okay, any other members? Okay, Gwen, did you want to comment any further on the report?
No, I'll liaise with colleagues in TFGM about a suitable programming slot for those matters.
Okay, thanks for that. Everybody happy to note that report? Okay, item 10 is dates of future meetings, which are the 13th of November, the 15th of January and the 12th of March. Item 11 is the exclusion of the press, the public and bus operators. So can I thank everybody who's taken part in the meeting so far. We'll just adjourn for a minute or two until officers can tell us we're in private session. Okay, thanks.